There are two philosophers that are arguing against the amount of input that the government should have in our everyday life decisions, such as how to hire people for a job, what race, what gender they need to be, where I can place my new business, how much taxes I need to pay, and that kind of stuff. These two philosophers that I'm talking about are Ayn Rand and Milton Friedman. I conducted a survey on my own to see how the language shapes the way that people think about a certain situation. And I asked two questions, but in different settings. The first one was, the government should have limited say in our daily life decisions. And the second statement was, the government should have no say in our daily life decisions. And one day I asked them the first question, or the first statement, and asked if they agreed with the statement. And 100% said yes. A day later, I asked them the second statement and asked if they had agreed with that statement, and once again, 100% said yes. A week later, I once again asked them both questions, but they were right next to each other on a survey. And what was really interesting was that the first statement was that they should have limited say. The government should have limited say. 100% once again agreed with that, but less than 3% agreed with the second statement, saying that there should be no say from the government in our daily life decisions. The reason I asked these questions was because the two philosophers, Rand and Friedman, are basically taking each side. But they're doing them years apart from each other, which would explain why each person had such a large following. Ayn Rand was a very strong believer that the government shouldn't have any role in our daily life, that we should have a completely laissez-faire system as far as business goes, and having a true free open market with voluntary cooperation with the people in business in our everyday life. She said in an interview that, quote, everyone is enslaved to everyone, and that she objects the idea that everyone has the right to vote on everything. Just because the majority voted on something doesn't mean that it's right, end quote. She later goes on to say that voting for political and democratic reasons is completely acceptable, but as far as interfering with our business practices and such, she wants the government to have no part in that. Milton Friedman takes the other stance. He thinks that they should have limited involvement, and he explains himself in such a way. Quote, we should be free from coercion of the government. You shall have joint action only as far as people have been persuaded to act together. Responsible individuals, after free and full discussion, have agreed to jointly cooperate in some venture, end quote. In the practice of business, he agrees that the government shouldn't have any say, that a white business owner living in a racist neighborhood has to hire a person of color. This would hurt the business owner because they would lose business due to having to hire that employee. Friedman points out two kinds of harm in his book, and he calls the first one positive harm. This is a physical act that one person puts on another person, causing some kind of physical harm. The other being a negative harm, which is two individuals that cannot come to an agreement on how to complete a business transaction. Friedman believes that the government should step in and intervene where there is a positive harm, but not a negative harm. That being said, he thinks that as far as business goes, the government shouldn't be able to tell you how many people you have to hire of a certain race or gender and that kind of thing, because in some areas it could basically hurt your business, because people will no longer choose to shop in your grocery store or receive help from your business because of said employees, like if you were to be in a racist community or something like that. Now granted, that is going to a very far extreme, but he thinks that some things such as like national defense and the amount that a dollar bill is worth, the government should step in and kind of help out with that, because that kind of stuff can't be individualized in a free market. He does recognize that we will never actually be truly free, because how drastically different everybody has as far as opinions and what things should be worth and that kind of thing. But this just goes to show that when you have two people arguing very similar points, you should compare them side by side instead of one at a time. The power of language is very strong, and just by changing the one word from no to limited, changed the way that people looked at things when they were compared side by side versus when they were compared separately from each other.